It began on a quiet orbital morning above the planet Rithvale, where the Academy's domed classrooms floated against a backdrop of sapphire clouds and burning twin suns. The hum of the station was a lullaby to most species here, except for the humans. They always found ways to stand out, even in silence. Lyra Ven, an Ulvari instructor known for her calm precision, entered the hall with her usual glide, her crystalline tendrils glowing faintly in the air. Her students, a mix of scaled Varn, furred Tyrians, the insectoid Dresh, and one young human, shifted in their seats. The human was named Mason Reed. He wasn't remarkable at first glance: brown hair, sharp eyes, an easy smirk that didn't fit the rigid calm of alien academies, but there was always something about humans that unsettled others. The air around them seemed unpredictable, alive. Today was different, though. Today he had brought something. Lyra floated to her lectern. Today's discussion concerns the concept of extinction, she began, her voice resonating through crystalline modulation. How life, once vanished, leaves nothing but memory. Her tendrils shifted toward the holoprojector, and an image flickered to life, a majestic creature, fanged, powerful, with eyes like embers. The room hushed. This, Lyra said, is a Terran predator known as Canis lupus. Extinct for nearly 1,000 years. Humans once called them wolves. Mason's fingers twitched on the desk. His classmates exchanged glances. A Dresh student, clicking mandibles in interest, hissed, "Extinct." Like the rest of Terran apex predators. Consumed by their own creator's greed. Lyra gave a slow nod. Indeed. The records show humanity's early industrial collapse led to biogenetic sterility among wild species. Even in revival attempts, no true wolf was ever restored. The species' essence, its behavior, its instinct, was lost. Mason leaned forward. That's what the archives say, he muttered. The instructor's crystal eyes blinked. You disagree, human Reed? He smiled faintly. I think extinction is a word used by people who stop looking. A quiet ripple moved through the class. Lyra's tone cooled. Careful, human. Data is not opinion. Extinction is a matter of record, not sentiment. Mason stood. The move startled everyone. Humans rarely stood in a lecture. It was seen as a challenge among some species. I don't mean disrespect, he said evenly, but records can be wrong. You all think wolves are gone. That they only exist as images and genes stored in some forgotten archive. But that's not true. The room filled with murmurs. The Tyrian student, all fur and narrow amber eyes, gave a low growl. Humans and their myths. What next? You'll claim your planet still has forests. Mason reached down into a containment case beside his chair. The case pulsed with containment seals and bioenergy locks. Lyra's glow brightened in alarm. What are you doing, human? The case hissed open. For a moment, there was silence, then a low, rolling sound filled the room. A growl. A creature stepped out, silver-gray fur bristling, golden eyes locked onto everything and nothing at once. It was lean, muscular, breathing slow and steady. The air changed. Even the oxygen seemed to hesitate. Every alien in the room froze. Lyra whispered, almost reverently, "Impossible." The wolf turned its gaze on her. Mason reached out and touched its head lightly. "Meet Ghost," he said. "He's the last of his kind. Or maybe the first of something new." No one moved. No one even breathed. The Dresh student hissed again, backing away. That creature should not exist. Its genome was irrecoverable. Yeah, Mason said. So I rebuilt it. Lyra blinked once, twice, her glow flickering erratically. You rebuilt an extinct species? Mason shrugged. I found fragments of preserved DNA in an old Terran cryovault, deep under the Himalaya range. Then I used human adaptive genome synthesis, something we don't share with the Union, to rebuild what was missing. And this ghost? Lyra whispered. He's not just code or cloning, Mason said. He's alive. Learned. Wild. The wolf padded forward slowly, sniffing at the alien students, each movement calculated, primal. When it growled softly, several of them flinched. Mason smiled faintly. That's what it means to be alive. To make others feel something. Lyra's tendrils flicked. You brought a predator into an academic institution, human Reed. Do you understand the violation this represents? I understand rules, Mason said. But some lessons need to be felt, not just read. There was silence again. The kind that carried weight. Lyra's voice softened. You risked your life, for a myth. He looked at her. Wolves weren't myths. They were reminders. Of loyalty. Of pack. Of something humanity lost when we left Earth behind. For the first time, the class didn't know whether to argue or listen. Outside the transparent dome, the twin suns burned across the blue horizon. The Academy's orbit shimmered. Ghost sat beside Mason's leg, staring at the instructor with eyes that seemed to remember the hunt, the wind, the cold. Lyra studied them both. You realize, human Reed, the Galactic Union classified Terran wolves as irrecoverable danger class fauna. Possession could warrant termination. I know. And you still brought it here. Yeah, Mason said, smiling faintly. Because extinction doesn't scare me. Forgetting does. The room fell utterly silent again. Even the ventilation hum seemed distant. The wolf looked up at him, then at the aliens, its eyes not of a beast, but of something ancient, something that once ran under moonlight and defied extinction itself. Lyra exhaled, her crystalline glow dimming to a soft violet. Perhaps, we should begin the lesson anew. And with that, humanity once again reminded the galaxy why it should never underestimate what it thought was gone. The Academy corridors whispered that night. Word of the humans' wolf spread faster than plasma through a conduit. Rumor became fear, fear became fascination. Instructors debated security protocols. Students whispered that the beast had eyes like lightning and a soul older than stars. But Mason Reed sat quietly in his quarters, the dim blue glow of the orbital station painting long shadows over the sleeping form of Ghost. The wolf rested beside his bunk, fur shimmering faintly in the synthetic light. Every so often, the creature's ears twitched, reacting to sounds that no sensor could register. Can't sleep either. Mason murmured. Ghost lifted his head, golden eyes glowing faintly. He didn't respond, of course, but there was something in the way he looked at Mason, a recognition that transcended words. The door hissed open without warning. Human Reed, Lyra's voice filled the room, composed but tight. You are under review by the Ethics Council. Your presence is required. Mason stood. Now. Now. He glanced at Ghost. He comes with me. Lyra hesitated. That is, unwise. Then I'm not coming. The instructor's crystalline skin pulsed once, the alien equivalent of a sigh. Very well. But if your creation harms anyone, he won't. They walked the long halls toward the council chamber. Every alien they passed stepped aside. Even armed security drones adjusted their flight paths, uneasy in the presence of something not listed in any database. The chamber doors opened. Inside, the Galactic Union seal hovered over a circular table. Seated around it were representatives of 5 species, the scaled varn, the insectoid dresh, the psionic luri, the aquatic dafin within their hovering containment spheres, and 1 human administrator from Earth's distant colonies, a man named Dr. Saul Iver. Dr. Iver's expression was unreadable. Mr. Reed, he said coldly. You've caused quite an uproar. Mason gave a faint smile. Seems that way. The Dresh delegate clicked its mandibles sharply. You resurrected a predatory life form classified as extinct level threat Delta 3. Do you deny this? No, Mason said. I confirm it. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Dr. Yver leaned forward. Do you understand the implications, son? Wolves were eradicated for a reason. Early humans couldn't control them. Even modern biogenetics couldn't tame the wildness in their genome. Mason looked down at Ghost, who sat perfectly still, calm as winter frost. You call it wildness. I call it integrity. The psionic Luri's voice echoed directly in his mind. You risk destabilizing biological law. Why bring such a creature here? What purpose does it serve? Mason's jaw clenched. Because you've all forgotten what it means to coexist with something that doesn't obey your order. Wolves don't follow control. They follow trust. Lyra stood silently at the side, watching her student challenge the most powerful minds in the system. The Varn delegate hissed. Trust? A primitive word. Civilization demands order. Order without instinct becomes stagnation, Mason shot back. You all live in perfect cities, sterile and controlled. You've forgotten the thrill of uncertainty, the beauty of fear. Wolves lived by balance, by respect between predator and prey. The Dresha's mandibles clicked again. Are you suggesting that chaos has merit? I'm suggesting that life does. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Dr. Yver rose. His face was weathered, his uniform lined with human insignia. Mason, you've always had a reputation for defiance. But this crosses every ethical line in the Union Charter. Maybe the Charter needs rewriting, Mason said softly. That earned a ripple of shocked energy across the room. Even Lyra flinched at his audacity. Dr. Yver stepped closer. You don't understand the danger you've brought here. That animal is not just a wolf, it's a symbol. The other species remember the early human expansions, the wars, the terraforming disasters. You bring a predator from that era, and it sends a message humanity can't afford. Mason met his eyes. Maybe it's time they remember who we were. Ghost stood, sensing tension. A low growl rumbled from his chest, deep and resonant. The Daphin sphere pulsed nervously. Dr. Yver froze. Control it. Mason didn't move. He's not a pet. Then what is he? Mason looked down at the wolf. He's proof that we can bring back what we lost, if we're willing to pay the price. The psionic Luri's presence rippled again. Your creation must be studied. Contained. Mason shook his head. You study him, you'll kill what makes him real. You'll turn him into another lab product. Dr. Yver's tone hardened. Then you leave us no choice. Mason Reed, by order of the Galactic Union Ethics Council, you are to be detained pending review. The specimen. Ghost growled again. Will be transported to biocontrol for immediate containment. Mason's fists clenched. You're making a mistake. Security drones swarmed in, surrounding them with shimmering blue fields. Ghost's eyes flashed gold. The drones beeped warnings. Lyra stepped forward suddenly. Wait, she said, her voice sharp. Allow me to escort them. I am responsible for this student's instruction. I will ensure compliance. Dr. Yver hesitated. You're vouching for him? I am. Mason looked at her in surprise. Dr. Yver frowned, then gestured. Fine. One night. Tomorrow morning, the wolf is to be transferred. As they exited the chamber, Lyra whispered to Mason, you should have destroyed it. He shook his head. You can't destroy what's already part of you. They walked in silence. Ghost padded beside them, silent shadow against the metal corridor. When they reached the observation dome, Mason stopped. Through the glass stretched the planet Rith Vale, its forests glittering under twin suns. Do you see that? Mason said softly. They call it paradise. But look closer, every tree is gene-modified, every animal sterile. No evolution. Just endless repetition. Lyra studied him. You brought a predator into paradise. Paradise, he said, isn't real if nothing dares to bite. Ghost pressed his head against Mason's leg, as if agreeing. For the first time, Lyra felt something she hadn't in decades, uncertainty. Maybe the human wasn't reckless. Maybe he was reminding them of something the stars themselves had forgotten. That night, alarms shattered the calm. The Academy's security lights flared crimson. The intercom screamed, "Containment breach." Sector 4. Lyra and Mason ran toward the noise. The corridor filled with panicked students. What happened? Mason demanded. A security officer shouted, one of the cloned fauna exhibits, escaped. The Zenth tiger. Mason's eyes widened. A tiger? Yes. Gene-modified predator. It's loose. Ghost's fur bristled. His ears twitched, catching frequencies beyond hearing. Lyra raised a trembling hand. It will kill anyone it sees. Mason smiled grimly. Not anyone. He unlatched Ghost's collar. Wait, what are you doing? Letting nature handle it. Ghost shot forward like a silver blur, vanishing into the corridor's red light. Lyra stared after him. He'll die. Mason shook his head. He's a wolf. Down in Sector 4, the air was thick with fear and blood scent. The tiger, a creature of muscle and metallic stripes, roared, smashing through barriers. Then it froze. From the shadows, golden eyes met its own. The wolf stepped forward. No words. No commands. Just instinct. Two relics of Earth's forgotten wilderness faced each other beneath the cold light of the stars, one born from control, one from memory. And somewhere above, Mason whispered, show them what extinction really means. The metallic corridors echoed with the tiger's roar, a deep, mechanical thunder that vibrated through the decks. Students and staff huddled behind security barriers, whispering prayers in a dozen languages. The Zenth tiger's body glowed faintly from the synthetic alloy woven through its hide, half creature, half machine, designed to be the perfect predator. And yet, as it stalked down the corridor, sensors flickering along its spine, something made it pause. A low growl rolled through the shadows. Ghost stepped out of the red light, his fur gleaming like molten steel, eyes burning gold. He was smaller than the tiger by half, but his stance, steady, primal, unbroken, commanded the space between them. For a heartbeat, the station seemed to hold its breath. Mason watched from the observation feed, fists clenched. Lyra stood beside him, her glow flickering nervously. He'll be torn apart, she whispered. Mason didn't look away. Watch. The tiger lunged first, pure force, claws like blades, a blur of engineered fury. Ghost ducked under it, fast as lightning, snapping at the creature's flank. Sparks flew as fangs met alloy, but the wolf didn't flinch. They clashed again, a thunderous impact that shook the walls. The tiger's roar echoed through the corridors, but Ghost didn't retreat. He moved with precision, darting, weaving, biting, retreating. Every motion was instinct refined over millennia of evolution, something no lab could reproduce. Security drones swarmed in, recording everything. Across the academy, students gathered around holoscreens, watching the impossible battle unfold. The Dresh muttered in disbelief. How does flesh challenge metal? The Tyrian growled low. Because that is no beast. That is war given form. Lyra watched as Ghost slid beneath the tiger's swing, jaws snapping around the exposed joint at its neck. The sound of tearing metal filled the hall, and the tiger screamed, a horrible, digital shriek. Mason whispered, that's it, boy, show them. Ghost leapt, using the tiger's own weight against it. They crashed through a barrier, slamming into a containment wall that cracked under the force. Sparks rained down. Then silence. For a moment, all anyone could hear was the hum of emergency lights. The tiger lay motionless, its eyes flickering and fading to black. Ghost stood over it, panting, blood and oil dripping from his muzzle. He lifted his head and howled. The sound tore through the station, wild, pure, ancient. A sound no one in the galaxy had ever heard before. The cry of Earth. The cry of survival. All across the academy, students froze. Some covered their ears. Others trembled. And somewhere deep in their alien hearts, something stirred, something they couldn't name. Lyra's glow dimmed to a deep violet, her voice soft. That sound, it feels like morning. Mason's eyes burned. It's not morning. It's memory. When security finally arrived, they didn't move to restrain the wolf. They couldn't. Even the drones halted, sensors confused by the creature's biosignature. It wasn't just animal, it was something else. Something alive in a way they couldn't define. Dr. Evere stormed into the room minutes later, his face pale. Do you have any idea what you've unleashed? Mason turned. A wolf. That was a combat-class bioform. It's taken us months to design that containment. And he killed it, Mason said quietly. Because you forgot what nature already knew. Dr. Ever's fists tightened. This isn't nature. This is a space station full of civilians. And yet, Mason said, none of them are dead. Lyra stepped forward. Doctor, the creature defended students. It targeted only the threat. That thing is the threat. Evere barked. But even as he said it, Ghost turned his head toward the human. Eyes calm, steady, golden. No aggression. No hunger. Just, understanding. Lyra whispered, I don't think he knows the difference between us and prey. Mason smiled faintly. He does. Wolves always did. Outside the containment sector, the gathered crowd began to disperse, silent, shaken, thoughtful. Every alien species present had witnessed something they couldn't rationalize, instinct outmatching technology, balance defeating arrogance. By morning, the Union Council was in uproar. Reports flew across the network, extinct Terran predator neutralizes escaped bioform, human genetic experiment violates treaty law, fear of ancient species spreading through colonies. The academy became a fortress overnight. Guards at every door, scanners on every corridor. Mason and Ghost were confined to isolation quarters while the investigation deepened. Lyra visited him once during that time. She found him sitting on the floor, back against the wall, Ghost resting beside him like a silent guardian. They want to dissect him, she said quietly. Mason nodded. I know. They're afraid. He looked up. Good. Good. Fear's the first sign something's alive. Lyra's crystalline tendrils shimmered. You sound almost proud. I am, Mason said. He did what no machine could. He reminded them that power doesn't come from programming, it comes from purpose. She hesitated, then asked, what is his purpose? To live, Mason said simply. And to remind us what that means. Later that night, the isolation chamber lights dimmed. Mason closed his eyes, exhaustion finally overtaking him. But Ghost didn't sleep. His ears twitched at distant echoes, the soft vibration of footsteps, the hum of machines, and something else, something approaching. A whisper through the vents. Then a metallic hiss. Ghost's head snapped up. The door's lock glowed red, overridden from outside. Mason stirred. What the? The door slid open, and figures stepped in, 3 humanoids, faces covered, weapons humming with containment fields. One spoke, voice distorted. By order of the Union Bio. Control Division, specimen and handler are to be extracted for off-world study. Mason rose. This isn't official protocol. You have no authority here, human read. Ghost growled. The sound filled the room, low and primal. The lead figure raised his weapon. Sedate it. Mason moved without thinking. No. The first dart fired, blue plasma streaked across the air. Ghost leapt, intercepting it midair, the dart embedding harmlessly in his fur before he slammed into the attacker. The others opened fire. The chamber erupted in chaos. Blue light. Shouts. The smell of ozone. When it was over, the intruders lay unconscious, their weapons scattered. Mason stood shaking, adrenaline coursing through him. Ghost panted, teeth bared, fur singed. Mason looked at the bodies. They weren't official. They were black ops. Lyra's voice came suddenly through the comm, Mason. What's happening down there? The council detected unauthorized access. He grabbed her projection pad. They tried to take him. Someone inside the Union wants Ghost for themselves. Lyra's glow flickered with alarm. You must leave the station immediately. Mason looked down at Ghost. You hear that, boy? The wolf's tail twitched. Time to run. He turned toward the viewport. Beyond it stretched the vast blue planet below. Guess we're going for a walk. And with one final command to override the emergency docking clamps, Mason Reed did what humans have always done when cornered by the impossible, he jumped. The escape pod tore free from the orbital station, flames trailing as it entered Rithvale's atmosphere. Inside, Mason gripped the controls, Ghost beside him, both lit by the fire of re-entry. Behind them, alarms screamed across the station. Above them, the galaxy held its breath once more. Because humanity had just done something no other species dared. They'd brought back the wild. And set it free. Fire tore through the clouds as the escape pod descended, wrapped in a shell of flame and roaring air. The outer plating screamed under pressure, metal shuddering with every second of re-entry. Mason braced himself, knuckles white on the control bar. Hold on, Ghost, he shouted over the deafening roar. The wolf growled low, crouched against the trembling floor, eyes locked on Mason with perfect calm, the kind of calm that only comes from something born to survive. The pod slammed through the upper atmosphere, flames giving way to the shadowed blue of Rithvale's skies. Below stretched endless emerald forests, vast, glittering things that swayed like living oceans. The planet was supposed to be safe. Controlled. Biostabilized. No predators, no competition, just regulated life. But from here, Mason saw something else, movement in the trees. The kind that shouldn't exist. Hang tight, boy. He pulled the release lever. The pod's thrusters kicked, slowing the descent, and they crashed through the treetops with a thunderous impact. Metal screeched against wood and stone until the pod skidded to a stop in a small clearing. Steam hissed from the ruptured hull. For a long time, there was silence. Then a low groan. Mason coughed, pulling himself free of the restraints. The air was thick with damp earth and strange floral scents. It smelled alive, too alive. He stumbled out, dragging his survival pack, and turned toward the pod. Ghost. A sharp thud from inside. Then the wolf emerged, shaking his fur, eyes scanning everything. His nostrils flared. His ears twitched. And then he gave a low growl. Mason frowned. Yeah. I feel it too. The forest wasn't still. The leaves trembled without wind. The ground pulsed faintly beneath their feet, like a heartbeat. The air carried a sound, almost a hum, too low for normal hearing. He tapped his wrist console. Atmosphere stable, but high bioenergy readings. This isn't what the Union surveys reported. Ghost's head turned sharply. Something moved between the trees. A shimmer, no shape, just displacement, as if the air itself bent around something. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. It wasn't alien. It wasn't machine. It was something in between. Tall, thin, skin smooth and luminous like liquid glass, with eyes that glowed faintly blue. It watched them with quiet intelligence, its expression unreadable. Mason froze. Well, you're not in the database. The being tilted its head. You are not Union. Its voice sounded both inside and outside his mind. Not anymore, Mason said. The creature glanced at Ghost. That is not permitted. Mason smirked. You sound like my teachers. Ghost growled low again. The creature didn't flinch. That life form is ancient, it said. It should not walk here. Yeah, I've heard that before. The being's eyes flickered. You do not understand this world, human. Rith Vale was seeded by the Union to preserve balance. The forests are alive. The planet breathes. I noticed, Mason said, scanning the trees. You said it's alive. What does that mean? The being's gaze moved to the canopy. This world is a construct of biosymbiosis. Every root, every leaf, every cell connected. The Union made paradise by removing the concept of death. No predator, no prey. Mason glanced at Ghost, whose fur was bristling. Yeah. I can see why that might be a problem. Problem, the being repeated. Life without death isn't life, Mason said softly. It's waiting. The being's expression shifted slightly, almost confusion. You brought chaos into a perfect system. I brought balance, Mason said. The forest shuddered. A deep vibration rolled through the earth. The being turned sharply, eyes widening. You've woken it. Mason frowned. Woken what? The heart. Before he could ask, the ground split open nearby, roots tearing upward like serpents. A pulse of blue light surged through the forest. Trees bent, groaning. The air filled with a deep, rhythmic sound, like the planet itself had started breathing louder. Ghost snarled, stepping closer to Mason. The being backed away. The heart senses him, the predator. It has never felt such a presence in 1,000 years. So what happens now? The being looked up as the forest began to glow, a wave of energy rippling outward. Now the planet will try to correct the imbalance. The ground erupted. Massive vines shot upward, forming shapes, shimmering, translucent animals made of roots and light. Deer-like forms, birds of bark and crystal, beasts without hunger or blood. The Union's artificial creations. They surrounded the clearing. Dozens of them. Silent, glowing, unreal. Ghost bared his teeth. Mason whispered, they're not alive. They're just, pretending. The being's voice trembled. They are the guardians. They will neutralize the threat. Mason's eyes hardened. Let them try. The first construct charged, a stag of pure light, hooves smashing into the ground. Ghost met it mid-leap, jaws locking around the creature's throat. Energy exploded in a burst of sparks and bark fragments. The others attacked in unison. The forest became a blur of motion, light and shadow, wild and artificial. Ghost moved like a storm, every bite, every strike, tearing through the illusion of perfection. Mason ducked as a vine creature lashed toward him, slicing it apart with a plasma cutter. You seeing this, Lyra? He muttered out of habit, then stopped. She wasn't here. He was alone. Except for Ghost. And Ghost was winning. The constructs began to falter. Their forms flickered, their light dimming. When the last one fell, the clearing went silent again. The air thick with ozone and earth. Ghost stood in the center, panting, fur glowing faintly from residual energy. Mason knelt beside him, touching his head. You did good, boy. The being stared at them both, stunned. It should not be possible. "Welcome to humanity," Mason said. Then the ground shook again, this time deeper, angrier. From the heart of the forest, a massive pulse of light erupted, shooting into the sky. The being whispered, "It knows you now. The planet knows him. The heart will not rest." Mason looked toward the distant mountains, where the light originated. "Then we go to it." "Go to it?" the being said, shocked. "That is the core of the living world." "Yeah," Mason said, grabbing his pack. "And if we don't, it's coming for us." He turned to Ghost. The wolf's ears flicked. "Come on," Mason said softly. "Let's meet a god." They walked into the forest, the light of the heart pulsing on the horizon, as above them the night sky burned with stars. And somewhere far above, the Union ships were already descending, hunting for the human who had just awakened a living planet. And for the wolf who reminded the galaxy that life doesn't ask permission to exist. The forest thickened as Mason and Ghost pressed deeper into Rithvale's heart. The air shimmered faintly with blue motes that drifted like dust, pulsing in rhythm with that slow planetary heartbeat. Every step seemed to echo through the ground as if the world were listening. Mason moved quietly, scanning with his wrist console. "Energy levels off the charts," he muttered. "This whole planet's wired like a neural net." Ghost trotted beside him, ears flicking toward unseen sounds. When he paused, Mason did too. They'd learned to move as one, man and beast, thought and instinct synchronized. A low hum rose from beneath the soil, and shapes began to glow faintly under the ferns, veins of bioluminescent light, spreading outward like circuitry. Mason crouched, touching the earth. It was warm. Alive. "This isn't nature," he whispered. "It's design." From the shadows, the glass-skinned being reappeared, moving soundlessly. "You still walk toward the heart?" Mason nodded. "I need to see it." "You court annihilation," the being said softly. "The heart protects itself. It will not allow corruption to reach it." "I'm not here to corrupt," Mason said. "I'm here to understand." The being tilted its head. "And if understanding kills you? Then at least I'll know why." They continued together, moving toward the glow on the horizon. Hours passed, or maybe days, the sky never truly darkened. Rithvale's twin suns traded places endlessly, keeping the forest bathed in perpetual dusk. As they climbed a ridge, Mason saw the valley below. The heart of the planet wasn't a mountain, as he'd imagined, it was a colossal sphere of living crystal, half buried in the earth, pulsing with light. Massive roots stretched from it like arteries, feeding the entire forest network. "It's alive," Mason breathed. "It is the source," the being said reverently. When the Union built Rithvale, they needed control. They grew the heart to regulate evolution, to ensure no species could outgrow harmony. It ended war, hunger, extinction. "By ending choice," Mason murmured. Ghost growled low, staring at the crystal sphere. The being frowned. "It feels him. The predator gene disrupts its pulse. The heart will interpret it as disease. So it'll try to kill us." "Yes. Then we better move fast." They started down the slope, but the forest shifted ahead of them. Trees twisted, merging together to form towering shapes, humanoid constructs woven from bark and root, eyes glowing blue. The being whispered, "The Guardians." The largest stepped forward, voice like thunder. "Foreign life detected. Purge sequence authorized." Mason drew his pulse cutter. "You got any ideas?" Ghost bared his teeth. "That'll do," Mason said. The Guardians advanced, heavy steps shaking the ground. Ghost darted between them, slashing at their legs, forcing them to stumble. Mason fired bursts of plasma, carving holes through their torsos, but for every one that fell, another grew from the soil. The being shouted, "You cannot fight them all." "I'm not trying to." Mason yelled. "I'm buying time." He jammed a power cell into the ground and triggered it. The explosion ripped a gap through the advancing wall. Ghost leapt through first, Mason following close behind. They tumbled into a ravine, rolling through roots and dust until they hit bottom. Above them, the Guardians roared. Mason coughed, spitting dirt. Still alive? Ghost shook himself, ears flat, tail stiff. Good, Mason said. Because we're not done yet. They followed the ravine until it opened into a cavern, the walls lined with faintly glowing veins. In the center stood a massive structure, metal and bone intertwined. A Union logo half erased by age still shimmered faintly on its surface. An installation, Mason said. They built underneath it. He pushed through the doorway, his wrist light cutting across dusty consoles and long-dead monitors. A control core still hummed faintly in the center. He brushed debris from the display. The terminal flickered to life. Project RITHVAL, Biosphere Integration Record, 991 years active. He scrolled through lines of data, predator genomes removed. Population stabilization at 99.9% equilibrium. Evolutionary variants suppressed. Then a final line, blinking, unauthorized biological signature detected. A voice filled the chamber, a cold, synthetic female tone. Warning, contamination present. Initiating planetary sterilization sequence. Mason froze. No, 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 cancel that. The display pulsed red. Sterilization protocol irreversible once begun. Outside, the ground trembled violently. Ghost barked once, pacing. The being clutched its head, voice strained. The heart is activating. It will purge everything, forest, air, life. Mason slammed his fist against the console. There has to be a manual override. The being looked at him. Only a Union Prime code can stop it. Mason stared at the ancient logo. Then maybe there's one buried here. He ripped open a side panel, pulling out old data cores, connecting them to his wrist console. Ghost stood guard, growling as the walls quaked. Lines of ancient human code scrolled across Mason's screen. Come on, come on. He found it, a prime override, long dormant, signed by Dr. Saul Iver. Mason's jaw clenched. He knew. The being's eyes widened. Your own kind built the cage. Mason didn't answer. He entered the code. The system demanded biometric confirmation. He pressed his thumb against the scanner. Match detected, human genome. Override accepted. The alarm ceased. The trembling slowed. The forest outside stilled, the light of the heart dimming to a low pulse. The being exhaled, voice trembling. You stopped it. Barely, Mason said. The terminal's display shifted. New text scrolled, emergency directive, release containment memory. A hologram flickered above the console. Dr. Iver appeared, years younger, eyes weary but resolute. If you're seeing this, the recording said, then Rithvale has awakened. We thought perfection would save us, but it only made us fragile. The predators we erased were never the danger. The danger was forgetting what they taught us, to adapt, to fear, to grow. If anyone finds this, bring the wild back. The hologram faded. Mason stood in silence for a long time. Then he whispered, guess you got your answer, old man. Ghost brushed against his leg, tail low. The being stepped forward. What will you do now? Mason looked toward the glowing valley. Finish what he started. He closed the terminal and slung his pack over his shoulder. The Union thinks this world is theirs. It's not. It belongs to life. Outside, the forest's pulse steadied again. The heart still glowed faintly, but now, within its rhythm, there was something new. A counterbeat. A heartbeat that wasn't synthetic. Ghost lifted his head and howled, the sound echoing through the cavern, through the roots, through the living veins of the world. And for the first time in 1,000 years, Rithvale howled back. The echo of Ghost's howl rolled through the endless forest until it reached the horizon. The planet itself seemed to breathe in response, its pulse aligning with the ancient rhythm of a predator returned. Far above, in orbit, a fleet of Union vessels blinked into existence. Sleek, sterile, precise, machines of peace that had never fired in war. Commander Halric stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, staring down at Rithvale's surface. "We have verified activation of sterilization protocols," his officer reported. "But the signal was cancelled mid-cycle." "That is not possible." Halric's expression hardened. "Then someone is down there." "Union identifiers?" "Negative," said the officer. "But, there's a human life signature." Halric's jaw tightened. "Impossible. Humanity has no authority on Rithvale." "Should we proceed with reset protocols, Commander?" Halrix looked at the swirling green planet, its cloud cover glowing faintly with unnatural light. "Prepare the drones. I want that interference found and eliminated." Down below, Mason watched the skies flicker as streaks of light descended, automated drones dropping like rain, their plasma thrusters cutting through the mist. Ghost growled deep in his chest. "Union reinforcements," Mason said. "Guess we hit the nerve." The glass-skinned being's body shimmered with tension. "If they reach the heart, they will reinitialize the purge. They will erase you." "Erase him." Mason crouched, checking his rifle. "Then we keep them away." "You cannot fight the Union," the being said softly. "I don't need to fight the Union," Mason said. "I just need to make them remember why they were afraid of us." He turned to Ghost. "Let's show them what extinct really means." They moved through the undergrowth as drones cut through the canopy, scanning beams slicing the air. Mason fired once, taking one down in a flash of blue fire. Ghost pounced on another, dragging it into the dirt and tearing through its fragile core. Each drone death sent a faint signal through the network. Mason knew it wouldn't take long before the fleet pinpointed his location. He needed a plan, and fast. He glanced toward the heart in the distance. Its glow had shifted again, flickering with strange patterns like neural activity. "It's learning," he whispered. "It's adapting." The being tilted its head. "To you." "To us," Mason said. Then the sky screamed. A thunderous beam of light tore through the forest, obliterating everything in a perfect circular radius. The blast waved through Mason backward. Trees disintegrated into ash. He hit the ground hard, ears ringing. Ghost yelped, sliding to his side. "Orbital strike." Mason shouted over the roar. "They're cleansing sections." The being shimmered, eyes wide. "They will destroy the heart if they must. They have done it before." Mason's face hardened. "Not this time." He activated the neural link in his wrist console, syncing to the old Union interface hidden beneath the forest floor. A digital web unfolded before his eyes, tendrils of light, signals, energy flows. The planet's living systems were mapped in real time. He reached out through the link. "Come on, if you can hear me, help me fight back." For a moment, there was nothing. Then a pulse, an echo that matched his thoughts. The heart responded. All around him, the forest moved. Roots burst from the soil, weaving into towers of armored wood. The ground split open, revealing rivers of molten light that surged like veins of fire. The planet itself was awakening. The drones hesitated, their programming flickering in confusion as the terrain changed faster than they could process. Mason stood, rifle in one hand, neural interface glowing. "You wanted a sterile world," he shouted Tawa. "RD the heavens. Let's see how you handle one that fights back." Ghost barked, launching at another drone, while living roots speared upward, impaling metallic hulls midair. In orbit, alarms filled the command decks. "Commander! The surface is reacting. Unknown organic structures are interfering with targeting systems. Halrix turned toward the display, disbelief twisting his voice. The planet is hostile. It's evolving, sir. Halrix hissed. Impossible. That world was pacified centuries ago. Then explain this. The officer pointed at the feed, massive tendrils of crystal and wood breaching the clouds, emitting EMP pulses that fried Union sensors. Halrix stared. Contact the Council. Tell them the anomaly is human-induced. Down below, Mason climbed to a high ridge. The heart was visible again, its surface fractured, shards floating upward in slow, rhythmic spirals. It was communicating now, its light pulsing in a pattern he recognized. Binary. He translated it quickly. You awakened me. Purpose. Mason's voice shook. To live. To be free. The heart's reply came instantly. Then we fight. Ghost howled beside him, and the forest responded with a sound like thunder, a billion leaves vibrating in resonance. From orbit, Union ships began to open fire. But their beams scattered across the planet's growing shield of bioluminescent energy, refracted like sunlight through water. Halrix gritted his teeth. Deploy orbital lances. Level the surface. Sir, Union law forbids. Do it. The first lance fell, a spear of plasma capable of cracking mountains. It pierced the atmosphere and struck the heart directly. But instead of shattering, the heart absorbed the energy. Its glow turned crimson. Mason shielded his face as waves of heat rolled outward. The ground rippled beneath his feet, and Ghost barked in alarm. The heart pulsed again, brighter than before. The glass-skinned being fell to its knees. It feeds on their fire. It grows. Mason grinned grimly. Good. The heart unleashed the energy in a blinding surge. Massive arcs of plasma erupted upward, striking the Union fleet. Ships exploded like sparks on the edge of space. On the command deck, Halrix stumbled. Retreat. All vessels, retreat. But it was too late. One by one, the Union ships were caught in the planet's wrath. Gravity itself bent around Rithvale as its living core absorbed and redirected every ounce of power sent against it. Then, silence. In the forest, the fires dimmed. The light faded. Mason stood staring at the sky, now clear again, stars shining where warships had once floated. Ghost pressed against his side, trembling with exhaustion. Mason knelt beside him, rubbing his neck. Easy, boy. We did it. The being rose slowly, eyes shimmering with strange awe. You changed everything. Mason exhaled. No. We just reminded them what change feels like. He looked toward the horizon where the heart pulsed gently, its color now a soft, natural blue. You can rest now, he whispered. But the heart's response echoed in his mind, calm, almost gentle. No rest. Growth. He frowned. What do you mean? The Union will return. And when they do, they will bring the cage again. Mason's grip tightened on his weapon. Then we'll be ready. Ghost raised his head and gave a low, determined growl. And above them, the first stars began to move, new ships emerging at the edge of the system, watching, waiting. The galaxy had seen what humanity could awaken. And this time, it was afraid. The stars that appeared at the edge of Rithvale's sky were not natural. They pulsed with artificial rhythm, then elongated into lines of light as new fleets arrived. The Union was not retreating after all. It was reforming. Watching. Calculating. Mason stood on a high ridge, his rifle slung across his back, Ghost pressed close against his leg. The forest below them glowed with the soft rhythm of a sleeping heart, vast, alive, but wary. The glass-skinned being approached silently. They will not stop, it said. To them, this world is now a disease that must be contained. Mason stared upward. They can contain the void if they think they can contain life. The being tilted its head. You speak like a creator. Mason shook his head. No. I'm just the reminder of what they buried. He pressed 2 fingers to his wrist console. Link me to the nearest union frequency. Static crackled. Then a voice answered, sharp and clipped. Identify yourself. Captain Mason Holt, Human Exploration Division, retired. And you're trespassing on a living world. There was silence. Then another voice, cold and familiar, Commander Howrix. You survived. That is, unfortunate. Mason smirked faintly. Yeah, survival's kind of our thing. Howrix's tone hardened. You've unleashed an unstable biological network that threatens Union stability. You will surrender immediately for containment. Mason looked out over the glowing valley. Containment's what started this mess. You killed every predator that scared you, and you made a galaxy that forgot what hunger meant. You mistake harmony for weakness. I mistake stagnation for death. Howrix's voice turned low. You are a relic of barbarism, human. The wolf beside you is the embodiment of chaos, the very reason we purged your species from ecological influence. And now you bring it back. Mason smiled without humor. You marked wolves as extinct. I brought one to class. Static hissed, and Howrix's reply was ice. Then class is over. The signal cut. Moments later, the skies burned again. Orbital carriers deployed hunter pods, sleek, spear-like drones packed with enough power to sterilize entire regions. They screamed through the clouds, leaving trails of fire. Mason turned to the being. Get underground. Now. What will you do? Remind them what extinction feels like. He tapped the console on his wrist. Heart, can you hear me? The planet's pulse rippled beneath his feet. Always. Then let's show them what it means to fight back. The forest exploded with motion. Trees uprooted themselves, roots braiding into towers that rose toward the incoming pods. The ground opened, swallowing some whole. The air filled with bioluminescent spores that confused sensors. Ghost ran ahead, leaping from trunk to trunk like a shadow given form, directing living tendrils with instinct alone. He wasn't just fighting, he was commanding. Mason realized it in a flash. The planet wasn't just listening to him. It was listening to Ghost. He froze, watching as Ghost raised his head and howled, and the entire biosphere answered. Every root, every leaf, every pulse of bio-light followed the rhythm of his voice. The heart spoke again through Mason's mind, words forming out of light. He is the link. The genome restored. The predator returns not to destroy, but to teach survival. Mason's breath caught. You mean, he's more than just an animal? He carries the code of adaptation. The piece you erased from yourselves. Ghost leapt through the smoke, tearing into a drone as if guided by purpose older than language. Sparks burst like stars around him. In orbit, Howrix's crew reported chaos. Sir. The biosphere is coordinating attacks. Our pods are being hijacked, they're turning on each other. Howrix's eyes widened. What? How is that possible? Unknown, Commander. The interference is organic. It's rewriting our drone logic. Howrix clenched his jaw. Then we bring order manually. Connect me to the Council. The holographic forms of a Union High Council appeared before him, 7 beings of glass and thought, their faces expressionless. Howrix bowed. The human has corrupted Rithvale's systems. The planet has achieved combat intelligence. Request authorization to use Annihilation Protocol. A long pause followed. Then the central figure spoke. You will not. Rithvale is Union property, and the loss of its ecosystem would destabilize our biological network across 50 sectors. You will capture the human alive. Howrix hesitated. He cannot be captured. He commands the heart. Then sever the command, the council said coldly. Kill the wolf. Back on the surface, Mason and Ghost reached the base of the heart. The sphere pulsed brightly, threads of light weaving outward. Mason pressed his palm against the surface, warm, alive, vibrating with impossible energy. He whispered, "They're coming for you. They always come. And they're going for him. Then you must choose." The words echoed like thunder in Mason's mind. What choice? You can save the world, or the one who made it remember what it means to live. He looked down at Ghost. The wolf's flank was bleeding from shrapnel, his breathing heavy, but his eyes, those ancient, amber eyes, were calm, locked on Mason with unshakable trust. Mason swallowed hard. No. Not this time. I'm done choosing between life and love. He pulled his rifle tight to his shoulder as new shapes emerged from the sky, Union strike squads, descending in shimmering beams. Heart, he said softly, link us both. You will not survive. Neither will they. The ground split open, roots coiling around Mason and Ghost in a cocoon of light. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then both of them screamed, not in pain, but in transformation. The planet poured its living energy into their veins, merging neural patterns, rewriting boundaries. Mason's vision blurred, his body burning with wild, primal force. Ghost's heartbeat synchronized with his. When the cocoon shattered, the forest bowed. Mason rose slowly, his eyes now burning the same amber as Ghost's. His breath came out in visible mist, like steam in cold air. Every movement felt alive with the pulse of the world itself. He and Ghost moved together, one mind split across two forms. The first Union trooper hit the ground, and vanished, consumed by a blur too fast for sensors to capture. Another fell. Then 10 more. The strike squads began to panic. Commander, we're being flanked by something. Howrix's voice cut in, trembling with disbelief. That's impossible. No biological form moves like that. But it did. Man and wolf. Human and myth. Predator and protector reborn as one. The Union had erased wolves from existence, and now they faced the reason they'd done it. The forest became a storm of movement. Mason's mind burned with images that weren't his, hunts across ancient ice, survival through fire and famine. Ghost's memories, the DNA of evolution itself, poured through him. He saw the truth. The Union had feared extinction not because it was loss, but because it meant they could no longer control what lived next. They had mistaken life for obedience. And now, life had teeth again. Howrix's final transmission was a whisper through static, "What, are you?" Mason's voice echoed through every open channel, deep and resonant. Humanity. The part of the galaxy you tried to tame. And as he spoke, Ghost's howl rose again, not alone this time, but joined by countless others echoing across Rithvale. The predators were back. The galaxy listened. And trembled. The stars had never looked closer. From the Heart's Ridge, Mason could see the Union fleet arrayed across the void like a steel crown, 1,000 ships forming a silent, perfect ring of control around a world that no longer obeyed. The forest was quiet now. Not dead, watching. Every leaf, every pulse, every root waited for his next breath. Ghost stood beside him, his fur shimmering faintly with the same light that pulsed through Mason's veins. They were no longer man and wolf. They were one frequency, one instinct, two halves of something the galaxy had forgotten how to name. Mason tilted his head back and spoke softly into the comms. You wanted the heart. Come take it. The reply was instant, Howrix again, his voice sharpened by fury and awe. You've turned yourself into an abomination. Mason's lips curved into a faint smile. That's what you call anything that refuses your leash. Howrix's tone broke its calm veneer. You've doomed this system. The Council has authorized full intervention. You are to stand down, or Rithvale will burn. Mason looked to Ghost. The wolf's amber eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the sky. They never learn. He turned toward the heart, now towering with new growth, vines of crystal, veins of fire, roots that pulsed like arteries in time with his own heartbeat. He placed his hand against its surface. Heart, he said quietly. Show me their faces. Light flared, and suddenly he stood within the neural core, surrounded by projections of the Union Council. 7 beings, vast and translucent, looking down with the serene detachment of gods who'd forgotten what empathy felt like. The central figure spoke first, voice like glass. Human. Your interference has awakened instability within the biosphere. You threaten the balance of 50 Union worlds. Mason's reply was calm. Balance isn't life. It's a cage that doesn't rattle anymore. You misunderstand your own place, the Council said. You were permitted to exist within structure, not beyond it. Ghost's reflection appeared beside him, silent and still, a phantom of light and shadow. Mason met their gaze. You made yourselves shepherds and then wondered why the flock grew dull. You erased hunger, fear, and evolution. And you called it peace. The Council leaned closer, the air humming. Peace is survival. Mason took a step forward. No. Survival is struggle. Wolves taught us that, you kill the weak, yes, but you make the strong stronger. You hated them because they reminded you that nature doesn't bow. It bites back. The chamber quaked. The heart pulsed in response, its light flickering across the Council's faces. One of them, an older entity, crystalline and cracked, whispered, he speaks like the Founders did. Another hissed, do not invoke that chaos. Mason pointed upward. Chaos made you. It's order that's killing you now. The Council's glow intensified. Enough. You will surrender the heart's core or we will erase your species completely. Mason laughed quietly. Erase us? You tried that once. You marked wolves as extinct. He looked down at Ghost. And yet, here we are. Ghost lifted his head and howled, and for a brief moment, the sound crossed light years. Across distant Union worlds, creatures stirred in their sleep. Buried instincts awakened. The call of survival, of life unfiltered, resonated through everything that had ever crawled, walked, or breathed. Mason turned back to the Council. You feel that? That's not rebellion. That's remembrance. Enough, the central figure shouted. You cannot win against the collective will of the Union. I don't need to win, Mason said softly. I just need to make you feel again. He reached out, connecting his neural link directly to the heart. For an instant, pain and light became one, his thoughts scattering like sparks across the network. The heart amplified everything, his memories, Ghost's instincts, every moment of humanity's rise from fragile prey to unstoppable survivor. The signal spread through the void. Every Union ship's systems flickered. Every Council node trembled. The galaxy felt what Mason felt, hunger, fire, love, loss, defiance. The raw, untamed soul of evolution itself. Howrix gripped the railing of his ship as his crew screamed. What's happening? It's broadcasting emotion, one cried. Directly into the neural net, unfiltered. Howrix fell to his knees, gasping. For the first time in his life, he felt fear. Real, primal, beautiful fear. The Council's forms began to fracture under the weight of sensation they hadn't felt in millennia. One clutched its chest. It's too much. Stop this. Mason's voice echoed through them all, calm, steady, unstoppable. You wanted order. You built eternity. But life was never meant to last forever in silence. You forgot what it means to fight for breath. The heart's pulse accelerated, merging with Ghost's howl and Mason's heartbeat until they were one sound, deep, resonant, infinite. Then, everything went white. When the light faded, the fleets were gone. Not destroyed, changed. Ships floated silent, their hulls overgrown with vines of living metal. Energy signatures shifted from cold plasma to bioluminescent flow. The galaxy itself was rewriting its laws. Mason stood on the ridge once more. The forest around him was different, older, stronger, but peaceful. The glass-skinned being approached slowly, eyes wide with awe. It answered you, it whispered. The entire Union is evolving. Mason nodded, exhausted but smiling faintly. They'll remember now. Fear, hunger, choice, all of it. And you? The being asked. He looked down at Ghost, who rested at his side. The wolf's fur was streaked with veins of light now, his breathing slow but steady. We'll keep teaching, Mason said softly. Every civilization needs someone to remind them that peace without challenge isn't living. It's waiting to die. Ghost raised his head and nudged Mason's hand, eyes filled with the kind of understanding that didn't need words. Above them, the stars shimmered faintly, not cold anymore, but alive, pulsing in time with Rithvale's heart. Somewhere far away, a new planet bloomed with life it was never meant to have. Evolution had begun again, wilder, freer, beautiful. Mason looked skyward one last time. Let them come. We'll be waiting. Ghost stood beside him, muscles coiled, tail steady, gaze unbroken. Together, they howled. The sound rolled across the world, through the void, through the network of every living thing that still remembered what it meant to fight for tomorrow. And in that moment, humanity was no longer just a species. It was a reminder. That extinction is never permanent, as long as something still dares to breathe.